This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Wednesday, July 7th. Welcome to Africa 54. We continue to work remotely because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But what hasn't changed is our commitment to bringing you the latest and most important news from the African continent and around the world. This is today's Africa 54. We begin our broadcast in West Africa, where the parents of 121 Nigerian students abducted by armed bandits at Bethel Baptist High School in Damishi, Kaduna State, held a prayer vigil at the school Tuesday, hoping for their children's safe return. The parents gathered in solidarity as the school manager and head of the Kaduna Baptist Conference says he was allowed to talk with some students Tuesday, a day after armed kidnappers stormed their school.
So the total number of students we recovered yesterday were 28. And today, by the grace of God, we had a call from the bandits. They are sure that our children are well, and they are okay. In fact, we had the privilege of speaking with a few of them. They counted themselves in the jungle, and they gave us information that they are 121.
Jangado says that members of the government have promised to work to rescue the students and bring them back home. It is the fourth abduction of students in Kaduna State in the past 6 months. There have been 7 mass kidnappings of students in Nigeria so far this year. Nigeria has been plagued by ongoing school kidnappings since 2014, when Boko Haram rebels abducted 276 female students from a government school in Chibok in northeastern Borno State. The attack in Burkina Faso last month that killed 160 civilians was in retaliation for the activity of pro-government civilian militias in the area, according to Human Rights Watch. In this report from Ouagadougou, Henry Wilkins profiles a human rights activist who has been campaigning against abuses committed by those militias for years.
In the daytime, Dr. Daouda Dialo is a scientist. By night, he's one of Burkina Faso's most prominent human rights campaigners. He runs the Collective Against Impunity and Stigmatization of Communities, CISC, a campaigning group set up in the wake of the Yergo massacre, an attack which saw around 200 people murdered, mostly from the Fulani ethnic group in early 2019. This video, circulated on social media, purports to show terrorists linked to Islamic State on a recruiting mission in the region of Lola, just one of the terror groups Burkina Faso has been battling for almost 6 years. VOA confirmed the location, but cannot independently confirm the authenticity of the images. But rights groups say the number of civilians killed by security forces has often come close to the numbers killed by the terror groups. Dialo says he feels deeply affected by this.
I am a man who is very sensitive, who likes to help the widow and the orphan, the vulnerable. I devote my free time to this, but it is not an easy job, nor is it paid. I do it out of humanitarianism.
He points out that one of the government's most controversial policies is a law which allowed pre-existing civilian militias, known as Ekugo, to be armed and trained by the government. The new force is called the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland, or VDPs. When the law was created in 2020, Human Rights Watch said arming poorly trained civilians could lead to abuses. So far, there have been 38 incidents of violence against civilians by VDPs, killing at least 95 people, according to data from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project. This man, whose name has been withheld to protect his safety, says he watched as VDPs killed 2 of his neighbours after accusing them of being terrorists.
A man named Isa, he was sick and he came to the market and they shot at him there. He ran to his house and they killed him. Bad things happen. That's why I had to run away. The militias are chasing you. The terrorists are chasing you.
Burkina Faso's Ministry of Defence did not respond to an interview request about the incident. One VDP leader, who asked for his identity to be protected, said most VDPs simply wanted to defend their homeland, many having had terrifying encounters with terrorists themselves.
The terrorists came and burnt my house. They were looking for me. but fortunately I was not around. They also killed some of my neighbors and burnt their houses as well. It's because of that I really felt I had to join the VDPs.
The leader of the ruling MPP party admits it's possible VDPs commit abuses, but says they are necessary.
In the framework of the fight against terrorism, we are obliged to face the evidence that the VDPs make a very big contribution.
As widespread protests against insecurity in Burkina Faso has swept the country in recent weeks, President Roch Kabore said he will reform the VDPs as one way of improving security. Dialo says he thinks the government should take corrective action quickly. However, the government has yet to say what its actions will be. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso.
The International Committee of the Red Cross says that more than 1/3 of Mozambique's Cabo Delgado province has been displaced amid an escalating Islamic State-linked insurgency. Residents there are living in extremely harsh conditions. David Doyle has the story.
Anna Ayuba doesn't know where her son is. She's from Kisanga in northern Mozambique, but was forced to flee amid an escalating militant insurgency in Cabo Delgado province. Today, Ayuba lives with her daughters in a structure made of plastic sheets and reeds.
Our son got separated from us and we don't know what state he's in, whether he's alive or not. Because if we knew he was dead, we would have put it behind us. But we can't put it behind us because we don't know anything.
The International Committee of the Red Cross says it's increasingly worried by a rapidly deteriorating situation in Cabo Delgado. More than 800,000 people have been displaced there since last year, following sporadic attacks. That's more than 1/3 of the population in a province that was already suffering poverty and climate shocks. The ICRC says the influx to cities has put a strain on health and water supplies, and that the situation is more dramatic on nearby island archipelagos. People made a dangerous journey across the sea to reach them, arriving with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Here's the ICRC's Melanie Isabelle Brouillette.
So here on Matemo Island and in the islands surrounding the Ibo district, the people are lacking many necessities. They have lack of food, lack of access to primary health care, and they're also extremely traumatized.
Mozambique is one of the world's poorest countries. Analysts suggest that recruitment into Cabo Delgado's Islamic State-linked insurgency has been made easier by poverty and unemployment. An attack on the town of Palma in March this year caused the displacement of over 60,000 people, and thousands more are still unaccounted for. Last month, Southern African nations approved the deployment of troops to Mozambique to help it combat the violence.
David Doyle of Reuters filed that report. Nearly 50% of the people living in Chad's Lake province are displaced. Some of the people are from other parts of Western Sahel region, where armed attacks by Islamist militants and other groups continue unabated, despite interventions from United Nations peacekeepers and international armed forces. According to the UN Refugee Agency, half of Lake Province's 450,000 people are displaced. Most of them were forced to move here from other parts of the country or other parts of West Africa's Sahel region. About 30,000 of the camp's residents are former Chadian refugees who have returned from neighboring countries, mostly because of rising insecurity. The region is also hosting more than 16,000 refugees from Nigeria and Niger. Despite the presence of thousands of UN peacekeepers, attacks by jihadists in West Africa's Sahel region have risen sharply since the start of the year, particularly in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, with civilians bearing the brunt of the violence. UNHCR says the total displaced population in Lake Province has risen by 16% in March 2020. Most new arrivals are fleeing islands on Lake Chad, where jihadist groups are active. Ghanaian youth of the main opposition National Democratic Congress protested in the streets of Accra Tuesday, demanding justice for all persons they say have been killed or brutalized by security forces. Ghana's Electoral Commission declared President Nana Akufo-Addo winner of the 2020 elections with nearly 52% of the votes, while opposition leader and former President John Mahama received 47% of the votes. The Supreme Court later confirmed President Akufo-Addo's re-election. Among the protesters' demands, calling on President Akufo-Addo to provide decent jobs for the country's youth. They also called for an investigation of all alleged acts of violence committed by security forces to ensure justice. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke with Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Monday and stressed the need for all parties involved in the Tigray conflict to commit to an immediate, indefinite, negotiated ceasefire, according to State Department spokesperson Ned Price. Price said Tuesday that Secretary Blinken also condemned the destruction of bridges into Tigray and other impediments to access. Price also said Blinken also urged Prime Minister Abiy to commit to the steps outlined in the United Nations Security Council on July 2nd, including the complete withdrawal of Eritrean and Amhara forces from Tigray, full, safe, and unhindered humanitarian access to populations in need, the establishment of a transparent process to hold accountable those responsible for human rights abuses and atrocities. Egypt and Sudan both say they have been informed by Addis Ababa of its plans to begin the second phase of filling the Great Renaissance Dam built by East African nation upstream of the Nile. But Ethiopia has not officially confirmed this operation on the dam, which has long been the subject of conflict with Egypt and Sudan, who fear for their water is set to take place in July and August. Egyptian Irrigation Minister Abdel Atis said in a statement that the North African nation rejects this unilateral measure and denounced it as a violation of the law and international standards that regulate construction projects on shared basins of international rivers. The Sudanese Foreign Ministry is also denouncing Ethiopia's plan as a flagrant violation of international law. The mega dam, with a total capacity of 74 billion cubic meters of water, has been built since 2011 in the northwestern Ethiopia, near the border with Sudan, on the Blue Nile, which joins the White Nile in Khartoum to form the Nile River. Mobile clinics are now rolling through the streets of Ivory Coast after officials set an ambitious target of vaccinating 1 million people against COVID-19 over the next 10 days, more than doubling its total so far. Lucy Fielder has the details.
In a bid to accelerate its vaccination campaign, Ivory Coast has started bringing health centres to the people. The country's mobile clinics were rolled out on Monday, heading for busy parts of the capital Abidjan, such as a market in the sprawling Adjamé district. Ivory Coast, like much of the continent, has suffered from a slow start to inoculations, largely due to a lack of supplies. Fewer than 800,000 shots have been administered since vaccinations began in March. That's enough for a single dose for just 3% of the population. Ivorian health authorities are now hoping to vaccinate 1 million people in Abidjan over the next 10 days. While acknowledging the scale of the challenge, they hope that targeting some of Abidjan's most frequented places will make it easier for shoppers like Meninia Keita.
We are very happy. Proximity suits everyone. For example, I was going to get vaccinated later, but while I was doing my shopping, I saw that you could get vaccinated here, so I took advantage of it.
Officials say the inoculation campaign is also picking up thanks to better communication, including promotions at soccer matches. The West African country has received around 1 million doses of the AstraZeneca, Pfizer and Sinopharm medicines to date, and expects delivery of 1.2 million more in the coming days.
That was Lucy Fielder of Reuters reporting. Tell us what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come. Will Belgium return thousands of artworks stolen from Democratic Republic of Congo during colonial rule? We'll tell you all about it after this short break. Welcome back to Africa 54. The White House announced shipments of millions of the Moderna vaccine donations for Guatemala and Vietnam on Tuesday after pledging to donate 4 million doses to Indonesia last week. Overall, the U.S. fell short of its target of sending 80 million doses to countries in need by the end of June. VOA White House correspondent Psaki reports on the challenges facing the U.S. effort to help vaccinate the world.
2 countries will receive U.S. vaccine donations this week, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said on Tuesday.
Both Guatemala and Vietnam will be receiving COVID vaccine doses from the Biden-Harris administration. Guatemala will receive 1.5 million doses of Moderna, and Vietnam will receive 2 million doses of Moderna.
As Indonesians brace for a surge in cases and lined up for their shots, last week the Biden administration also promised the country 4 million doses of the Moderna vaccine to be shipped via COVAX, the UN mechanism for vaccine sharing, as soon as possible. The U.S. has committed to donating 580 million doses worldwide, but it has failed to meet its target of sending out 80 million doses by the end of June. Psaki told VOA there are huge challenges.
Sometimes we have to work through legal barriers. We have to work through regulatory barriers. There are issues as it relates to materials needed to distribute these vaccines. And there are also even transportation issues with refrigeration needed as well. So we have noted, even as we've allocated all these doses, as we committed to, that part of it is countries need to be ready to receive them.
The challenge begins with determining the appropriate vaccine. Most of the U.S. available stockpile consists of Pfizer and Moderna, which require ultra-cold storage that not all countries are prepared to handle.
Once they get there, we have to know what's the expiration date on the batches that we're sending. We have to know at the country level whether there's regulatory authorization for that particular vaccine to be used and that particular batch to be imported. And that's just really the beginning. We then have to make sure that the vaccines can get in cold storage all the way to the last mile, that the workforce is ready and the vaccinators are trained, and that they can get out.
Recipient countries must also coordinate the different vaccines they're getting from other providers, including COVAX, China, and Russia, which requires a lot of planning and complicated supply chain management.
It shouldn't be a surprise that shipping vaccines is complicated from a logistics perspective, and we are behind. We should have been working on this 6 months ago.
There's also the fact that most of the vaccine doses are simply going to wealthy nations.
By the end of this week, we'll have reached the mark of 160 million fully vaccinated Americans.
We have locked up in the United States and the G7 and other EU countries the global supply of the very thing to end this pandemic, and so far not sharing at nearly the pace or scale that we need to reach what's the global herd immunity that will make all of us safe.
So far, the U.S. has shipped only about half of the 80 million doses it aimed to distribute by end of June. At the White House, Psaki Redakuswara, VOA News.
In our tech news, Union Bank, one of Nigeria's leading commercial banks, recently announced the winners of its 4th edition of the Innovation Challenge, Union-themed A New Discovery. The challenge was open to innovative entrepreneurs in fintech, e-commerce, health, education, and agriculture. For more perspective, Africa 54 technology correspondent Paul Ndiho via Skype spoke to Lola Aworanti-Ekugo, Head Digital and Innovation, Union Bank, Lagos, Nigeria.
Lola Aworanti-Ekugo, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today, Paul.
You are one of the leading voices when it comes to innovation and technology in Nigeria, especially in the banking sector. Let's start there.
Thank you for the compliment. Yes, I definitely work in the financial services sector as a technology expert. I'm actually a digital and innovation expert. I've been in the industry for about 14 years. I started off my career actually as a software engineer. That was in the UK. And then I worked in different areas in investment banking and other sectors as well.
Union Bank prides itself as the leading innovation bank in Nigeria. What are some of the things that you have done to earn that title?
Union Bank was actually one of the first of the big financial institutions to actually go remote, because we'd already first even enabled our staff to ensure that we could actually work remotely. So that was a big thing for us. Another thing that we did, which was really important, was setting up a digital academy for employees at the bank. The people that drive technology are actually your employees, in your organization. And it's so important that they are aware of how to use this technology and how it impacts their role. We've trained over 2,000 staff so far on key digital technologies, even including blockchain, robotics, data, so that they are well equipped to help drive the bank forward. And then the other thing we did, and that just ran, and we did that was just a few weeks ago that we concluded on that, was the Union X Challenge. And that for us is ensuring that we are collaborating with the industry. We had different focus areas around agri-tech, health tech, fintech, logistics, and more. Our vision was, working with them to build creative solutions, or the solutions that they already have, helping them make them more robust to ensure that they can scale, and of course, potentially even become unicorns in the future.
Quick follow-up on the Union X challenge. Are there some particular companies that made it through, some that you are proud of that you can maybe share with us?
Top 3 winners were Quezac, which was around education. Education is huge in Nigeria. It's something that, and I'm sure in the rest of Africa. So it was working around that and the gamification experience for students. There was also Gistabyte, which is around sort of social payments. And then there was T40, which came out third, and they essentially around logistics and making that simpler and smarter.
Earlier you talked about how before COVID the bank was preparing itself to go digital. How prepared are your customers?
It's good to look at it in different pockets, because of course we have different segments of customers, and for us it's important that we're providing the right solution for each of these sets. In Nigeria, for instance, financial inclusion is a big deal. We, at the moment, I think we have almost, I think it's about 35 to 40% excluded. So that's really big on the agenda. And many of these guys are in places that are not easily reachable. They have feature phones, so not necessarily the ones you can, as flexible as, of course, smartphones and whatnot. So for us, we look at it in that way. So for that segment, something that's big on our agenda was actually agency banking. And that was ensuring that the agents who are for Union Bank have the right tools. There's also the USSD technology, which allows feature phone users to transfer money and do a number of items on their phone without necessarily having to visit a branch for those things. So I think for them, it was more of enhancing their ability to do more things online and making the mobile more powerful for them.
Very interesting. You just brought up something. I've not been physically to any bank, at least like in 5 years. I do everything on my phone. To what extent are people using mobile banking in Nigeria?
So mobile banking is massive in Nigeria. The mobile penetration in Nigeria, I think, is also quite high. So we do have lots of people on either using the mobile app or going online or using the USSD shortcode if you have a feature phone. So it's very prominent. And with our youthful population, most people want some sort of mobile.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That was Africa 54 tech correspondent Paul Ndiho speaking to Lola Aworanti-Ekugo in Lagos, Nigeria. The Belgian government says it will begin the process of returning thousands of artworks stolen from the Democratic Republic of Congo during colonial rule, but there's a catch. Here again is David Doyle to explain.
Belgium's Africa Museum, once a celebration of the country's at times brutal colonial rule, will begin a process of returning stolen art to Democratic Republic of Congo, the Belgian government said on Tuesday. From the late 19th century up until 1960, thousands of artworks, including wooden statues, elephant ivory masks, manuscripts, and musical instruments, were looted from the country, likely taken by Belgian and other European collectors, scientists, explorers, and soldiers. Millions of Congolese are estimated to have died when the country was a personal fiefdom of King Leopold II, before becoming a colony of the Belgian state. Following a $78 million overhaul of the Africa Museum to take a more critical view of Belgium's colonial past, the Belgian junior minister Thomas Dermine said the government is ready to meet DRC calls for restitution.
For too long, the Congolese people have been cut off from this inheritance, their spirituality, the work of their ancestors. These objects do not belong in any way to the Belgian people, and they must be given back and reconnected to their roots.
But the works are not heading home just yet. Though the Belgian government will transfer legal ownership of the artefacts to DRC, it will not immediately ship them unless they are specifically requested. That's partly because Belgium wants to keep them on display. The government also says Congolese authorities are conscious of the bigger audience in Belgium, as DRC has few cultural centres or storage facilities.
It's a moral question.
The African Museum's director, Guido Grisils, says paying a loan fee to DRC could be one way to keep the artefacts in Belgium. He also said the museum has a large number of items whose provenance is unclear, and it could be the work of 10 to 20 years in discovering the precise circumstances in which they were acquired.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, we thank you for watching.
Join me for the next Straight Talk Africa. We'll look at the human experience of refugees. Can those who have escaped disaster and conflict be made to return to the place they fled in the first place? And what happens between those who leave their home countries and those who stay behind? We'll also bring you a VOA special report on the lives of refugees around the world. So join me for that on the next Straight Talk Africa.